Welcome to Tenacity with Sonia C, the podcast for founders, entrepreneurs, dreamers, and leaders navigating the journey of growth. In each episode, we get into the setbacks, the rebuilds, the pivots, and the lessons learned along the way. These are honest conversations with leaders who faced challenges head on and found success in business and in life. I'm your host, Sonia, and let's get started. My guest today is Andrew Ackerman. Andrew has spent his career inside the startup ecosystem from several different angles. He has built 2 companies from the ground up, invested in more than 70 early stage startups, and worked closely with hundreds of founders through accelerators and in the classroom. That advantage point has given him a front row seat to how companies actually develop, the early optimism, the pressure moments where leadership decisions matter most, and the patterns that tend to repeat across startups. More recently, Andrew brought many of those lessons together in a business novel called The Entrepreneur's Odyssey, where he explores the realities of building a company through story rather than theory. Today, we're talking about what founders often misunderstand about the startup journey, the signals that show up early in companies that struggle, and the leadership discipline it takes to stay in the game long enough to build something meaningful. Hi, Andrew. How are you today? Welcome to the show.
I'm awesome. Thanks for having me.
After seeing startups as a founder, investor, accelerator director, and teacher, what do founders misunderstand most about how startups actually work?
Okay. Sure. The short answer is until you do it, it's not what you think it is. Right. I tell people think, oh, it's like the Steve Jobs biopic, or it's like Silicon Valley, or it's like Shark Tank. None of that's true. Probably the number one thing that founders don't really get or don't appreciate is that 90% of your time, you're just doing what needs to be done. And maybe about 10% of your time are you using your superpowers. And what I mean by that, like my first startup, we built our own desks. And I don't mean from IKEA, like from wood, because we were cheap, we had no money, right? And like it
What?
wasn't going to happen otherwise. Like you can be the CEO of your company and you're out buying the coffee pods because otherwise nobody buys the coffee pods.
Yeah.
But what makes you, the right founder is that 5 or 10% of your time where you are functioning at that level. You got to be like one of the few people in the world that can do that. You live for those 5 or 10% of the time, but the rest of the time, there's just a lot of stuff that just has to get done.
When do you think founders actually realize that?
Right after they sell. No, I'm just joking. A couple of months in, a couple of weeks into, a couple of months in, the smart ones suddenly realize, wow, there's all this stuff like, oh yeah, I knew I wasn't going to have an assistant, but it didn't really occur to me how much of my time was going to be, I got to register a domain, I got to incorporate, I got to go look at a lease, whatever it is. Well, it just eats up and eats up time. By a month or 2 in, like you get that sense of like, wow, so much of my time just goes to stuff that has to happen rather than like
Mm-hmm.
big, like strategic or creative stuff. You
Yeah.
figure it
Eh,
out.
yeah. And is there like a timeline for, when you're going to get out of that rut and get into like the higher level stuff?
Yeah,
Or
that's
does that
exactly
take
when you sell.
years?
That's when you sell. No. I'm joking a little bit, right? So this is like where
Yeah.
your mileage may vary, right? So let's say you are, we're tech entrepreneurs or tech founders, now tech investors. So we live in like the smallest little corner of the startup world
Mm,
where it's a little bit weird. So let's start like more broadly. Let's say you own a restaurant, right? And the buck stops with you, everything from ordering food to like front of house. Like it's never going to stop.
yeah.
Maybe once you own like 5 restaurants and you're just managing your people running each individual location, then the texture of your job changes. But businesses like that, they don't scale the same way. So like, no, it's not going to change. But you got to do it because you love it, then it won't feel like work. But for us in like this little tech corner of the world, what'll happen is you're in that kind of I got to do it. There's no one else mode through your seed, and then Series A, you have a couple more people, but like you're all around the same table, so your hands are on everything. And then when you start getting to like your Series B level, then you've actually delegated like, oh, that's Jane. She's the chief marketing officer. She runs all of that. I don't, I talk to them infrequently, but like I'm not managing that. And then
Mm-hmm.
the nature of your job changes because then like the stuff that needs to get done has specific people to do it. So that
Yeah.
might change between 2 and 4 years in a tech startup.
So after investing in more than 70 early stage startups, what patterns do you see founders repeat that consistently causes problems?
Oh, I mean, man, like there's a zillion of them. Sit down. Let's start with first-time founders, because I was
Mm-hmm.
just having this conversation early today. One of the key first-time founder mistake you can make is getting excited about what you're doing and then just doing it in a vacuum. So let's say you're sitting at your cubicle at like a property management firm, and it's just like repetitive task after repetitive task. Oh, it's got to be a better way to do it. And then something hits you, like, I can do that, right? You
Mm-hmm.
quit your day job, you put your hoodie on, you start coding for like 3 months, and then you send it out into the world, and crickets, or best case scenario, people start using it, and like 30% of what you coded, no one touches because they didn't need it. In worst case scenario, like nobody touches it because it was really just you that had the problem, not other people. So
Mm.
going out there and just, doing it, just do it, wrong answer, right? The
Yeah.
smart ones, when they've gotten good advice or it's their second or third rodeo, they're like, okay, I have this problem. It's a big deal. Stop. I'm going to talk to 50 other people. And I want to
Yeah.
understand, do they also have the problem? Is it as painful for them? Is it as frequent as them? Is there as many people out there who have this problem as I think? And like, I think this is a solution. Do they need this piece? Do they want that piece? Will it work? I even have a whole technique around it that I talk about in my book called the index card app, where you simulate the entire app on
Mm-hmm.
index cards. Go through it with potential customers just to see what they're interested in and just to see what
Mm-hmm.
you need to build versus what nobody wants.
I love that idea because when I launched a startup, we were so passionate about it. We knew that it was going to be a little bit disruptive, and we were like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, we didn't. There's a lot we didn't think about." And then we launched, and just like you said, it was crickets.
Mhm.
And then I took a step back, and then I went and did that work and realized we had a really good product. It was just for a different industry,
Mhm. Yeah, and if you're
right?
lucky, you figure that out before you're out of money.
Yeah.
If you want, we can go into the index card app. It's kind of cool, or people can just read about it. But I'll tell you, well, I'm going to keep this PG, right? My screw up. My first startup was a startup for summer camps. So we
Okay.
would call it like SaaS for summer camps, like, website, photo galleries, one-way email systems and all that. And we made like the ultimate rookie error, which is like we just kind of built it, and then we didn't think in terms of the what can I do for like no money or like a couple of
Mm,
bucks that will test the theory behind it. Like, is this something? And then we can figure out if we want to build it or not. So we went out there, and this was like the early 2000s. We built a store where you could buy from multiple vendors anything your kid might want or need at camp, from like clothing to like, imagine this as a canteen, whatever it is you needed, baseball caps, boots, sleeping bags. And that was really hard to do back then. Spent a lot of money on
mm,
it, and a lot of pain and suffering. We rolled it out, and then like we maybe made $1,000 on it. And then when we tried to do the program, it was painful. When we did the post-mortem, we realized, oh, wait a second, the parents, they usually tune into this like the week before camp starts because they need to set up their account so they can see those photos.
mm,
But the trunks were already shipped, much less purchased. So we had built this
right.
entire store that nobody knew about until it was too late. Now, had we, instead of building it, had we just partnered with somebody, an existing store, and it would have been only one store and it wouldn't have been perfect, but we put up a link and got like an affiliate revenue, like 8% of what they sold, we would have realized for like 20 minutes worth of coding, we would have
Mm-hmm.
realized that no one's clicking on that link because timing's wrong. We could have saved ourselves tens of thousands of dollars in development just by like thinking about how do we test this first before doing.
So I want to get into a little bit of that with you because maybe you could coach me a little bit.
Mm,
So there's that aspect of it. You have an idea, you're an early stage founder, you don't really know how to go about it, but let's just say for the sake of this conversation, you figure it out and you succeed and you get somewhere. But then your company grows and now you need reoccurring customers and your churn is your issue. So,
Mm.
when you start, your issue is finding clients, but then you find clients, you make revenue, but you have to find a way to keep those clients or keep those clients from canceling. But if they do cancel,
Mhm.
how do they come back? Like it becomes a completely different problem. And I think I find that like a lot of conversations I have, founders don't think that far ahead. And then when you get there, it's like, oh, I thought the easy part was going to be finding clients, but now I got to find a way to keep my clients. What's your advice for founders when they get to that stage
Yeah, I mean,
or
the answer
before
is
they get there?
always stay close to your customers. So, it'll be different. Like if I'm a restaurant, I need people to come back. That's a different challenge at the highest level than if I have like
Mm-hmm.
software and it's recurring, like you're subscribed. I just need to make sure that you don't cancel. So it's
Yeah.
different. That's also, by the way, like, in my world as an investor in tech startups, we love recurring revenue, right? Because
Yeah.
that's where you start from. And you're right. If there's high churn, like that's a huge red flag because now you have to work harder and harder just to stay where you were.
Yeah.
And it'll get to the point where like you'll be doing everything necessary to replace your churn and not growing if you don't get a handle on it. But the number one thing is stay close to your customers. Like even like we were the C-level guys, even when we were at like 20 people, we would all take an hour or two of customer support a day. And it's okay,
Mm.
an hour a day, but we needed it because we needed to like know what the customers were saying. But if you have churn, like the number one thing to do is figure out why. Like get really
Yeah.
close to those customers. Like say, hey, Sonia, listen, I know you're leaving this, so I respect it. I'm not going to try to sell you back onto the service. If you want to come back, that's great. But I want to understand what about it wasn't working for you. Right.
Yeah.
And depending on when that churn happens, there's a certain hypothesis, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
you churned within the first month, odds are it wasn't what you expected. So then you go
Right.
dive down into that. Is it not what I expected because my marketing led them to believe something and it's not what this is? Or is it really the right thing, but they couldn't figure out like
Mm.
where that stuff was within? So you have to be very kind of purposeful about like drilling down with enough people to figure out why. But then that goes back to being close to your customer, right? If people are leaving, talk to them and find out why.
Do you find that a lot of founders sort of back away from dealing with customers and they're just more on the back end and they're letting their teams deal with customers and that's why maybe that point might get missed?
Mm, Not usually, but different founders come from different backgrounds. Like there are
Mm-hmm.
technical founders who are like, I just want to code, and like they're the stereotypical like programmer, and sometimes they get early success on the strength of the product, like despite their inability to market. And then you got other people who can just like, I have one portfolio company. The founder, just good looking guy, sweet talker. Like he just like sold like in this like property management solution, like sold. And at one point they had to step back and like he really had to learn how to analyze the different parts of his business and figure out like this part wasn't working, this worked, but wasn't worth the squeeze. This part is what people loved and paid for. So, he had to like learn the operations side. So I tell this joke. My joke it's kind of PG, so it's okay.
It's
But
fine.
it's sort of funny, but it's more instructional. I want to say set expectations. So there's like an old guy in the middle of the street at night. I was just looking down,
Hmm.
and a friend of his sees. I was like, "Hey, what are you doing in the middle of the street at night?" He goes, "Well, I lost $20." And he's like, "Oh, I'll help you look for that." So I look around. Like it's the middle of the street. There's not a lot of places for $20 to be hiding. So after about 20 seconds, he's like, "I don't see it. Where exactly did you lose the money?" And it goes down that alley. I said, well, if we lost the money down the alley, what are we doing in the middle of the street looking for the money here? He goes, well, the light's better. So
Yeah.
that's what founders will do. They tend to, when they're not sure, or they don't know what to do next, they don't know how to fix something, they retreat to where the light's good. If you're technical, I'm going to build more features. That'll solve the problem. If you're a marketing person at heart, it's like, okay, I got to go tweak the marketing spend. I'm going to get off Instagram, go on TikTok, whatever it might be.
Mm.
But you need, as a good founder, to be able to take yourself up out of that and ask yourself, where really is the problem? And if
Yeah.
that problem is not in your strike zone, you have to be comfortable enough, brave enough, whatever it is, enough to go in down that dark alley because that's where the money is. Don't just go where you're comfortable.
Love it. I think that's really great advice. I'm going to take that for myself too.
Yeah. And it was right. It was only moderately funny, right? I didn't oversell that, did I?
No, no, not at all.
Mm.
So when you look at startups that fail and startups that's versus startups that survived, what early signals usually tells you which direction they are heading?
Hmm. Oh man, I'm in a weird world here, right? In the tech world, like if a third of my portfolio goes to zero in like a year or two, I'm doing awesome. Uh, so it's kind of a weird universe. Like imagine you were investing in restaurants. I'm like, hey, a third of my restaurants went to zero in the first year. Like that would be pretty bad. Um, well, things that I've learned over the years, never overrule my gut on coachability.
Mm,
So the best founders have a well-reasoned thesis for why they're doing something, but are willing to switch that up if you give them new data or a new logical argument. So they're not a weather vane. They don't bounce back and forth depending on who they've spoken to, but they're also not stuck. Like that's very interesting. So I'm just keep doing what I'm going to do. But they're in
mm,
that kind of middle zone of knowing what they're doing, but willing to change course if given a good reason to do so. And sometimes, like you start talking to enough founders, you get this feeling like that guy is not really listening. He's just waiting for me to stop talking. And there
mm,
are times where, like, the strength of the product, the early traction were so good that I'm like, yeah, but it's got to be something. He's got to be good enough because he's doing this. It may just be a chemistry thing. Every time I've done that, it's been a zero. That's it. It's the coachability thing. If you go through
yeah.
the stages, that's probably the biggest single indicator of, a chance to succeed.
So I mean, obviously you're not just investing in companies, you're also investing in people, and that would be the founder. What are some of the things you look for in a founder so that the ones out there that are going to go look for investment can sort of understand and know what the expectation is?
A couple of things, and it kind of blends together. Like we sometimes talk about my world, betting on the jockey or the horse. Like I think that's dumb. Like I've never been to a horse race and seen a horse win without a jockey, and I've never seen a jockey
Yeah.
running without a horse. So it's all kind of you need both. But the coachability is certainly one of them. The other things I look for is like this testing mentality that we talked about before.
Mm,
Everything you do is an easy test. Like you don't just do it. You build in, well, I'm going to know it's a success if this happens, right? I'm not just going to send out an email to market. I'm going to A/B test two different subject lines, right? Or I'm
mm-hmm,
not just going to build this. I'm going to test this and we'll see and we'll move on. So that kind of testing mentality is also one of the things I look for. One of the more subtle things I look for is some variation of, so I taught myself X.
mm,
That's the kind of like mentality, like they're not going to know everything they need to know. But they have to be willing to expand and do what everyone got to do what gets done because you're the only person, right? We talked about that earlier. So if you don't know how to do it, you need to learn how to do it. So I remember
yeah.
like when I was interviewing a tech co-founder for my second startup, one of his things he said was like, so, I looked at it, I thought this tech stack made the most sense. I didn't really know it, so I taught myself that tech stack. There are a lot of founders who would have said like, I don't know it yet. This is good enough. I'm going to go with this one. That was a good green flag for me.
Mm,
Um, so those are some things I'm looking for on a personal level that give me, one more, kind of the ability to close a sale. So I'm
mm,
one of those people that believes that there is inherent talent, but it's also teachable. But there's a certain percentage of people who just can't do it. They
yeah.
don't have that instinct when to hold the pen out and wait for someone to sign. So I remember I was interviewing one founder. We didn't end up investing, but we always ask, "What's your first entrepreneurial experience?" So he said, and we got a lot of like, "Oh, paper routes," right? Okay, I get it, fine. But he said, "Yeah, when I was in fifth grade, I noticed that a lot of the boys in my class forgot to bring pencils to school. So I bought a pack of pencils and I rented pencils for a nickel a day." And he didn't sell, he rented. It's like, remember, like recurring revenue?
Recurring revenue.
Yeah. So I mean, we were just going, and when he was done, I turned to like my coworker Mark, and I said, I don't really like the startup he's on, but I want to back him in something eventually. So like that kind of like can do sales, maybe really good at sales, like that's a really strong asset, especially early on when it's going to be founder-led sales. It's all
Hmm.
on you.
You talked about this early on, where it's like, as a founder, you do everything. You assemble chairs, you order toilet paper, all that stuff. That's an operator. At what point, as a founder, do you sort of like come out of that operator role and become the CEO? Is that hard for a founder to do?
It's a gradual movement. It's like the slider. Like you get to the point where you can afford an office manager. Great. Like a lot of the don't order toilet paper or coffee. Like little by little, as you grow and you're at a scale where you can actually afford to, and it makes sense to have people taking on functions, more of
Mm,
that comes off your plate. And a lot of founders actually don't make the transition work very well. So let me kind of put this in like a conceptual framework, but like
hmm.
concrete, not like artsy
Yeah.
far. Your goal as the CEO at any point in time is to do things that are big enough to move the needle in a big way. What can
Hmm.
you do to increase revenue by 30%, double revenue? Now, when you're just getting started and you're like at zero, great. You have to go out and make your first sale. You have to go make your
Yeah.
first five sales. That's the best use of your time. That moves the needle the most. That'll let you raise more money and get to the next level in the game. Once you're a little higher in the game, the best thing you can do is to be like, okay, I've been doing all the sales before. I can't scale. I only have so many hours in the day. I need to take what I'm doing up here and put it into a process that I can actually train other people on. So your next
Hmm.
step is to build a sales process that's replicatable, reproducible, that works, not just your instinct. And then after
Hmm.
that, you want to build the sales team that can do it for you. And that takes that off your plate, right? And that keeps freeing up more time. You'll get to the point where like you've tweaked your sales process and it's going well. And you're like, well, what do I do next, right? I got my COO who does that. I got my CTO. I got my CMO. What am I as a CEO doing that can bring like can double revenue or 50% boost to revenue? Sometimes the answer at that point is I got to go look for acquisitions. I'm going to find these other
Hmm.
companies that are like doing the same thing, but not as well. And they're not going to raise. I'll buy them up. I'll buy their book of business. Or maybe I
Hmm.
want to build or buy an adjacent product. Like I'm making $100,000 per client right now. If I buy this, I can add this feature. I can bring that up to 150. Or maybe it's like I'm working in North America. I think I need to open up in Europe. So when you're at
Hmm.
that stage in the game, what you need to do as a CEO to continue to move the needle changes. And if you've been paying attention, like it's a radically different skill at each stage.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of founders get to that point, and either they realize or their investors are kind enough to point out that what got them there will not get them to the next stage. And sometimes the founder will step sideways and they'll be like, great, I'm not going to be CEO anymore. I'm going to be the chief product officer. We'll bring in a senior, someone else who can take it to the next level. And sometimes there's like a hand in the small of their back pushing them in that direction, usually
Yeah.
an investor. So that's the thing. That's why I taught myself is so important, right? If you want to be
Yeah.
that founder that goes all the way up, you have to be prepared every 2 years to teach yourself and to get good at a radically different set of tools. And there's no shame. If you're not the right
Yeah.
person to take it that next step, hey, I send my kids to school. I don't homeschool. I'm not the right person to teach them these things. The
Yeah.
normal thing to do. In
Yeah.
fact, it's a very mature thing to do if you have a startup that's hitting those levels and you're not the right person to take it to the next one.
Yeah, and I also think that's being responsible as a
It is.
founder. You want your company to do well. You have investors that want return on investment, and the responsible thing to do is maybe stay in your lane of what you're really good at, and that's going to be more beneficial to the company.
Yeah. And listen, we've talked about this very calmly. It's a lot harder when it's your baby, right?
Yeah.
Think about what it was like to pick a preschool for your kid. Like that's actually an easy decision relative to this, and not everyone is that self-aware. And
Yeah.
as an investor, I like to give the founders an opportunity to grow into it. So there's this tension between you don't have a lot of runway because you never have a lot of runway, and I want you to get a chance to grow into it. So it's tough. It's tricky.
Mhm.
Every transition is tricky.
So, what was the first hard lesson you learned as a founder that no one warned you about?
We covered a couple of them, which is like we just built stuff. It turned out that like, for like almost nothing, we could have figured out that that was going to be a waste because we didn't test. Hardest lesson was testing. Test first, de-risk first, build later. Other things. So this is we haven't talked about this yet. So I had come from the consulting world. So I'd come from like Fortune 100 clients where their biggest problems, generally speaking, were from complexity. Like that was the root
Mm,
cause behind a lot of things, complexity. So a lot of what you would do is you would simplify, automate, simplify, whatever it did to remove complexity from the system to let them focus on what really mattered. Right? All that complexity was distracting them from their superpowers or their teams or their
mm,
workforces. So here I am, we're about 2 years into my first startup. And like the salespeople are going out there and like they have a zillion different offerings. It's like it's 9.95 for you, it's 9.98 for them, it's $10 for that guy, 9.97. It's like, well, it's actually 15, but third one free, whatever the variations were. And they were all meaninglessly different. So it was really bothering me. I'm like, Joe, man, why do we have we have 100 customers? Why do we have 100 different, pricing plans? We only need like
yeah.
three. And I'm trying to like simplify, standardize. And there was a point of tension. It was starting to get distracting to, I guess, the rest of the company. CEO took me aside, brought me into the office, and he says, Andrew, you got to stop this. It's like, you don't get this. And like, I'm like a little surprised. He's like, you don't get it. Like, we're early enough in our journey. We just need to say yes. Like, yes, we need the money. That's a large part of it. But also, we need to just say yes to our customers so we can learn from them. We need to
Mm,
learn what they need. We need to earn their trust. Like 3 years down the road, you want to simplify the pricing plan? Have at it. There's no one who's been working with us for 3 years at that point in time that's going to leave us because instead of 9.97, it's now 9.99. Right. But
mm,
at this stage, I'm not going to lose a sale because you want it to be $10 and not 9.98. Right. I want
yeah.
the customer, I want the referenceable customer, I want the knowledge from it, and I want the money. And he was totally right about that.
Wow. What did you learn from that?
I learned that I was totally wrong and I needed to change my attitude. And like,
Yeah.
it was funny. Like I got it. You get one of those, there's one or two ways you can take it. You can like
Hmm.
feel bad about it and like dig your heels in, or you can kind of take a step back and be like, fuck, man, you're right. I'm totally wrong. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll do better.
So, what do you think is a struggle for a founder once they start that acceleration of growth?
The main two things. One, time is the enemy, right? As you grow, you get more customers. That's awesome. Guess what? Now you have more customer support, or whatever the case may be. Now you have a more complicated business. Now you have more orders. You have to do more ordering. Everything starts adding up. And just when you thought you were freeing up time, because you could hire somebody, now you're losing time because you're scaling. It's not scalable. So you got to learn and think about how you scale it your own personal time processes, automation, you name it. The other stuff is what we talked about before, learning new skills at each stage. So this morning I had a meeting with a new organization that I'm working with called Thunder. They're all exited founders, and we are all in the mode of, hey, when we did our first exit, we didn't know, right? We
Yeah.
didn't have a banker, didn't have a good banker. We made a lot of mistakes. So, we're gonna be that for the founders when they get to this stage and they want to exit more effectively and get the full value of what they created. But we're sitting down there and like it's actually a painfully manual process of going out there and like creating a proposal, like gathering the information, putting it into like various points we can check it. So to his credit, the head of Thunder and Jason Kirby has automated huge chunks of that process. So we get to the
Mm.
point where like we have our discovery calls, we got a transcript. We dump the transcript and the deck and every other material we have into a custom chat GPT. It creates the outline of the presentation, and we take that and we throw it into Claude. It generates the entire presentation for us.
Oh,
And we give
wow.
it a once over, we edit it because nothing's perfect the first time. But Jason's been super purposeful about saying like, here are all the chunks of time that slow us down that are not that 5 or 10% of what we do that's our superpower. And he's like methodically automated pieces of that puzzle so that
Mm-hmm.
we're now more effective. We're using more of our time in that high level of functioning. So you can hire people, take it off your plate. You can put time into process and automation to take the time out of the system. But that's where you're going to start hitting your personal constraints to growth as a founder. Even if you know what to do,
Mm-hmm.
not learning something new, you're just going to run out of time executing on stuff.
Have you ever worked with a founder that like was had a genius idea, built it, but wasn't business savvy? And if so, what can a founder do when they're not, maybe they're not accountants, they don't understand what a basic balance sheet or profit and loss is. Maybe they don't know how to identify what their churn rate is. Is there a process for a founder to sort of go down the path of learning those things, or is that just something that they need to get like a interim CFO or whatever to
Mhm.
take care of?
So there's two pieces to it, right? There's like, I don't know how to do X, a small piece, or I don't know how to
Mm,
do X well, and I can outsource it. So, fractional CFO, like when you're at the right point, I am a huge fan of doing that. Um, but then there's the all like, oh, I don't really understand business. I just want to build. Like, I don't, it's gonna sound harsh. I don't engage with those people anymore. Like, I love them.
mm,
I love idea pound, more interesting people in my life, but you're just asking them to do something that they're not capable of doing, and you
yeah,
just end up like banging your head against the wall. They're always going to be in the middle of the street looking where the light's good. They're never going to go down that alley. So if I find founders who are like that and they're pitching it, I'll say, listen, I love what you're working on, Sonia, I don't think you have a complete team, a full team to do this yet. Right? Here's where the
mm,
gaps are. If that's not something you're comfortable stretching to do, you need to find a co-founder that's a complementary piece of that puzzle who's an equal. You're not outsourcing it, they're
mm,
not your minion. You got to find someone else who is strong enough because these things are mission critical. And you
yeah,
need somebody who's your peer who can call BS if you're not thinking it through.
yeah,
So in that case, like you got to have somebody on your team. The team collectively has to have that. Like small stuff, tactical stuff, that's fine. Push it out. But if
yeah,
it's one of those mission critical things, it's got to be on the
yeah.
team.
So what about the founder that doesn't have a lot of money, needs to like, really keep the wallet shut? They have a team, but they have high turnover in their team, and it's not something that they can fix. It's just how it works, and we can talk
Mhm.
about tech. So like you have a marketing manager here for 2, 3 years, and all of a sudden they quit. And then the founder sort of has to step into those roles until they can replace those individuals. And sometimes you can't find people right away. And sometimes you get to the point where I have friends and I've seen people who are founders who are juggling not just their own role, but like 3 or 5 or 6 roles until they find the right replacement. What's your advice for
So
that problem?
anyone in that case has a deeper problem,
Okay.
right? It's never just like hard to like. There's a Japanese technique called the 5 whys. That whenever
Mm-hmm.
you ask something, no matter what the person says, you have to ask why. Why is that? And they'll start explaining, well, we have high turnover. Why? Well, it's a demanding job and we can't pay that much. Well, why can't you pay that much? Well, our margins are pretty slim and this is that. Well, why are your margins pretty slim? Well, there's a lot of competition out there and we can't, there's a lot of competition. Well, why can't you charge more than the competition? Why aren't you winning? Well, it's kind of hard to differentiate ourselves. That was 5 whys. And we went from they have a retention problem to they have a problem with their economics, right? They don't have the money to pay them, to they have a problem with the competition, to ultimately they have a problem with their product. It's just not any better
Mm,
than the competition. So when you dig really far down in it and you get to the root cause, like the bigger problem with retention is usually something to do with the product or the business itself. Like
mm,
if you are like beating the crap out of the competition and making money hand over fist, you solve it with money, right? You solve it with upside. Now it may be, oh, we have an awesome product. And then you look at, well, what are you paying? Why are you paying? I just don't want to pay them that. Well, the problem is you're being cheap, right? Or
Mm,
you're giving them cash when they need to be equity, or equity when they want cash, whatever the case may be. But you got to drill down to figure why that's the case.
mm-hmm.
So I would say you don't have like, oh, we have a great business, but we have a fill in the blank problem.
Yeah.
If there is that problem, in this case, turnover, there's a deeper reason for it, and you got to really understand it and fix it.
What happens when you have a really great product, but you're competing against a very traditional industry that it's basically the mentality of if it's not broken, don't fix it. So it could be, your competition is a company that's been around since the 80s and they're still using like enterprise software that you gets installed on a computer, or they're running their business on Excel spreadsheets, and that's your competitor. And
Mhm.
you're going to your investors, you're like, we have a great product. We just can't compete against those traditional methods.
Yeah, so I'm going to push back on the assumption that you have a great product. So let's sharpen this a little bit. It's not your competitors, it's your customers we're talking about. Your customers have something they're using. And it's good that you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned Excel because sometimes it's paper, sometimes it's Excel. I have companies that go out there and they list their competition on their competition slide. And I'm like, well, when you go out there, who do you run up against most often? It's like, oh, 95% of the time it's just Excel. Well, put Excel on
Yeah.
the competition slide because that's the baseline.
Yeah.
So it is a legit competitor, like the status quo, like or a password manager. Post-its on the side of the laptop are a competitor, right? They're a shitty competitor, but they are a competitor.
They're still a
So
competitor.
the question that I have to ask, though, is if you have such a single quotes great product, why aren't they jumping to switch? So if they're
Mm-hmm.
not jumping to switch, I push back and say maybe you're not providing a better product after all. But you need to have a quantum level better to get people to change. Inertia,
Mm.
like you're telling me your product's better. I'm like, I know this. It looks better. I'm sure once I start using your product, there's going to be some things about your product that are going to be annoying to me. I just don't know what they are yet. So for me to change for this promise of something that might be better, but could be worse in some ways, like what's better has to be 50, 100% better than what I'm doing now to make it
Mm-hmm.
worth my effort to switch over. So if you have people that are using a horrible solution and they
Yeah.
won't switch to your product, like you got to understand what that is. And maybe your product's
Yeah.
not good, or maybe your product's great and your marketing sucks. I don't know, but you got to go figure out where the break point
Yeah.
is.
I'm going to give you another scenario.
Sure.
What if the issue is that your workforce is a little bit older and they're just used to doing things a certain way, and anything that you're introducing is very disruptive for them. Now, it is whatever you're introducing, management wants it. They're like, "Oh, this is going to be great for my business. It's going to allow me to see what's going on a day-to-day basis, etc." But the people that are actually doing the work are afraid of whatever the new product may be, and they're the ones pushing back on usability.
Okay. So this is where kind of the tech world and the traditional startup world kind of part ways. In the tech world, that's rarely an issue because the companies are rarely that old, right? I mean, it's like you come in, you pick your team. You're not going to pick someone who's got like unwilling to change or learn. It's more likely if you're coming in and taking over a company that exists, or you got a traditional business and there's a lot of people who've been doing it their own way for a long time. It's tough, right? Especially if you want to, maintain a certain culture in your organization where people feel like they have agency and they have a stake in the company. Be able to say, you have agency, you have stake in the company, but you got to do it my way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's tough. And the toughest one was the example you gave, where I want you to do something different, and there's no value for you, but there's value for me as the manager. Right? That was the example
Yeah.
you gave. So I would
Yeah.
start with other stuff. I would start with just the way same way you're thinking about selling something to a customer. You want to sell the productivity tools to your employees the same way. So pick something to start with that is, oh my God, so much better. They look at it and
Mm-hmm.
like they're willing to do it. And
Yeah.
then reap the benefits of it. And one of the benefits is a little bit of street cred that you can use for the next tool and then the next tool. So you pick your battles, pick the one that's going to remove a pain point of your employees as if they're your customers on this, and work your way up from there. And the ones that just won't change may be the ones that don't ultimately stay with the company. Because at some point you got to say, like, I need to do this for the business. I'm not
Yeah.
doing you any favors by letting you not change and our business go bankrupt.
For sure. What happens in the same scenario if you're trying to sell to a customer that has that problem, where you're trying to sell to the CEO or the VP of that business, and they're like, "Yes, I totally want this." And let's say they buy it, and I'm actually using this as an example because I've seen this in like oil, gas, and mining industries,
Hmm.
and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna get my field workers to use this," and the field workers are like, "I want nothing to do with this. I just want to
Yeah.
keep using that Excel spreadsheet, for example."
Spreadsheet, sorry, construction's like that just as much. And it's harder in
Yeah.
construction because at least in the oil and gas example you give, they all work for the same company, different departments, but same company.
Yeah.
And if you're building like any one of these buildings back here, that's real. This is not a fake backdrop. You can tell because like the glare is in my eyes.
Yeah.
If you're building even like a simple building like that, and you're the general contractor, 85% of the people on site are not your employees, they're subcontractors.
Hmm.
So you can't really force them to do stuff. Um, my answer with that is that you don't have a good product. And I'll explain what I mean by that. If I am buying a can of seltzer, I am the one who decides, I am the one who pays, and I am the one who benefits. But in your case, you're different people, right? The guy that decides may be the president of the company. The guy that pay might be an individual, regions or the head of certain projects. And the person that in theory benefits could be the people in the field, could be somebody in the back office. They could be all different types of stakeholders. So when you're designing your product, you need to design your product from day one to address
Mm,
all the people in that chain. Right. So
I
I've
love
actually
that.
backed companies in the construction space that have done that. And the number one thing I'm looking for is the guy in the field. Like,
Hmm.
is he going to push back? So I'll give you a simple example. There's a company called Smart Barrel that makes this kiosk where you check in when you're going into a construction site, and then it automatically rolls up into payroll. So like, you're not going to argue with me. You got there at 8:49, but no, I say you got there at 8:52, and we're going to argue over 2 minutes on your paycheck. Automatic. No, and by the way, now you can't have your friends sign you in at 9 o'clock on the button.
Yeah.
So a lot of the solutions that were out there were, I'm going to put an app on your phone. And then the worker's like, I don't want to do it. I don't want you spying on my phone. You want me to put something on the phone? You have to pay for my data, right? Or they were like key fobs. And they're like, oh, boss, my key fob fell in the cement pour again. Can you make me another? And then about to 5 minutes for the boss to make a new fob, and it fell in the cement again. Like, that was their way of fighting it. So this solution is like, you just go in there and type your telephone number in. If that's your unique identifier, takes a photo of your face. We're done here. Like, what
Wow.
excuses do you have? I don't have a telephone. Yeah, right, right. Just
Oh.
no, you have a phone, right? I don't care. It's a unique identifier and your face. But it was
Yeah.
designed from the ground up by somebody in the field who had been looking for a solution to it himself. And he had actually tried implementing some of these other solutions. And, he encountered all that problem. So he designed it from day one with,
Mm,
the complaints that the actual users were going to have. So
I
that's what I
love
mean by
it.
good product. You've taken this into
Yeah.
account up front.
Yeah. I mean, that's really great advice to sort of like start at the very, very bottom and work your way up because if your product, if the people at that level are the ones that are going to be using it, then if you solve that problem, you sort of solve every other probably
So
between.
that's where you also have to look at, like, I could solve it for the person who's going to use it, but then there's some other dude that has to pay for it and it's not coming out of his budget. So I got to go talk to him. Or,
Yeah.
it might be his boss I got to talk to and she makes the decision. It might not even be the boss. Right? Sometimes the the head of the company pays for it. And he said, well, listen, like Jim's my office manager. Jim's using it day to day. Like, if Jim will use it and says it benefits, I will pay for it. Right. So sometimes like the
Right.
decider could be far junior than the person who pays and vice versa. So in
Yeah.
customer discovery, you just need to figure out who all these people are. Right? You have to
Hmm.
understand who's involved. And this is less of an issue in consumer. It's more when you go business to business. But you got to understand that, which goes back to the very first thing we said, which is common first time founder mistake. I'm just going to go build it. I'm not going to go
Yeah.
talk to people. You talk to people, you figure out who the people, the stakeholders are, the users, deciders, payers, etc. You find that out from day one and you build for them from day
Okay,
one.
I have another question for you.
Oh,
Another
shoot.
scenario. I just keep thinking about them. Okay,
No.
so you've built a product and you've had like some great clients who were on board, were using it, product's doing great. Then all of a sudden you start hitting the clients that are like, oh, your product has too many features, too much for us. I'm not talking about price. I'm talking about like features, stuff. There's too much there, it feels confusing. Okay. Then you get the client that's like, oh, you don't have enough. Well, like
Mhm.
as a founder, like with your product, at what point do you say like, I'm not going to build anymore, or I'm going to stop building, or I need to build? Like, how do you fill the gap?
So if there's legitimately a difference within your customer set, and some of them want X, some want X plus Y, you can solve some of that with your user interface. Right. So ideally, you start off with, as your initial go-to-market, the ones that are super happy with the smallest set of build, and you kind of grow
Mm,
out from there. So they're the easiest one to get to. You can get revenue fastest. And as you add it, you're very purposeful about your user interface so that it doesn't ever become too heavy for the people who don't need those other things. I'll just turn that feature off. So there's a good technical fix for that around the
mm-hmm.
user interface. The problem with, hey, I need these other features before I can buy is sometimes they mean, listen, I need these two features before. Once you have them, that's great. Other times it just means like, yeah, I don't really want to buy it. I don't think these are there. And then you come back to them when the features are built and they're like, well, what about these other features? So sometimes that is I haven't really thought about it, a way of them saying no. And as a
Mm,
founder, it's kind of hard sometimes to figure out whether it's a no, I really do need this thing, and then I'm in versus,
yeah.
a soft no. And you can usually get around it by just probing and say, like, okay, so Sonny, if I build this, then you're in. Price is good, then you sign.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, maybe. And then I have to talk to someone else. Then it's a soft no, right? They haven't really thought about it yet. You
Yeah.
really want to get to that. And in fact, sometimes what you can do is you can actually pull that into like a letter of intent, especially around your first pilots. Like the first couple of customers are sometimes the hardest. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
actually they're not. It's then, customers 4 through 10 that are harder because you have personal
Yeah.
relationships with the first few. But in any case, when you're getting in there and they want to do a pilot and they're like, well, you don't have all of this, you don't have all of that. You're like, well, how about this, right? Let me put together a letter of intent. It doesn't even have to be binding, right? I'm going to spell out the things that you said you need. And, if I deliver it by such and such date, then you'll do a pilot. And if they're willing to sign it, they're legit. Like, okay, if you do it,
Mm-hmm.
they can still back out, but that's something. But if they
Yeah.
get kind of weird, like, I don't want to sign it. I know it's not, but it's not binding, so anyone I'm going to sign it. It's like, well, okay, well, is there something wrong? Did we leave something out? Yeah, there are some other features that you need. So if they get all squishy about that, maybe it's not the features. I mean, in an ideal world, you'll actually sell it. Like if they really, really
Yeah.
need it, and what you have is so painful, they're like, oh, how long is it going to take for you to build it? Like 6 months. Oh, damn. Then you can try one of these things. It's like, well, you know what, Sonia, you're not, you're not the only customer I think that would benefit from this. So it is on our development pipeline to build this. I just have this scheduled for, 8 months from now. However, if it's really that important for you, if you're willing to pay for me to bring on 2 more tech people, I can build this earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So if, and that's going to cost me whatever that was, $60,000. If you're willing to pay $60,000 to have this feature now rather than in a year, we can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they might, well, I don't know. Okay, fine. It stays on the 6 month or a year from now type. But if they're like, yeah, I need that now, I'll pay for the co-development. Or they might say
Yeah.
something like, is that like an advance or is that an addition? Is it custom work? But if they're willing to engage and they're willing to actually write a check sooner to get that feature, then that's meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But
For
anytime
sure.
anyone like kind of hums and haws and like, then you just gotta kind of take that with a big grain of salt.
Well, we're coming up on time, but before we wrap up, I have one last question for you. For
Hmm.
someone building a company right now and feeling the pressure of it, what discipline matters most if they want to stay in the game the long run in order to succeed?
They need to spend 5 hours reading my book. Now, I know that sounds super
Well, there's that.
self-serving, but it's actually legit. So let me unpack it for about 20 seconds, and then your audience can decide for themselves. Right. So I wrote this book after 20 years of investing in early stage startups. It's all the advice that I gave all my companies that I worked with. But I wrote it in the form of a story, right? Because I think stories are
Hmm.
more memorable. It always worked better when I was giving advice, so it's not boring. But think about it from a simple ROI perspective, right? If you can spend 5 hours over whatever period of time while you're on the train, who cares? And just read. And if you can find in that even just one thing that makes the difference between wasting 3 months, which for a
Hmm.
startup is the difference between like going out of business for lack of money or not,
Yeah.
and not. What else can you do by putting, I don't remember what it is, 25 bucks and 5 hours of your life against versus the
Mm.
success or failure of your business? I can't think of any other single use of your time that will have more impact on you if you're thinking about or have just launched or are struggling with a
Hmm.
startup right now. I can't think of any other use of 5 hours of your time that can make that much impact. So yes, totally self-serving, but that's why I wrote the book, right? I wrote the
Hmm.
book because I couldn't sit in weekly meetings with everybody for an hour a week or 2 hours a week and give it to them personally. So do
Yeah.
with that what you will.
Awesome. And I'll put all the links so people can get access to your book. And I think it's a great idea. And it's like probably the best advice after all the advice you've given us. Now we can just go read your book and get way more. I know I will for sure. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me. This was like a really great conversation. I personally I asked a couple of selfish questions. I'm not going to say
Mhm.
which ones, but it was really good advice, and I totally appreciate your time.
I'm so happy it was, I'm so happy it was useful for you.
Thank you. I want to thank Andrew for joining me today. Building a company forces founders to confront reality quickly. The market gives feedback, customers respond or they don't, plans change, and leadership gets tested in ways most people don't expect when they first start. What separates founders who last isn't that they avoid those moments, it's that they recognize the signals earlier, adjust faster, and stay disciplined enough to keep solving the real problems in front of them. If you're building a company right now, take a step back this week and look closely at the signals your business is giving you. Identify the one problem that keeps repeating and put a system in place to fix it instead of solving it again next week. And that's a wrap. Thank you for joining me on this journey of learning and growth. If this episode resonated with you, take a moment to subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share it with someone who's building through a challenge right now. You can also connect with us on social media and be part of a community that believes resilience is the real advantage. Remember, growth isn't linear, success isn't guaranteed, and setbacks are part of the process. What matters is how you execute. This is Sonia signing off, but as always, keep chasing your dreams with tenacity.